Okay, welcome everybody to the IFLA webinar, the international IFLA webinar about landscape 2050 and beyond. Welcome everybody for joining this meeting. My name is Nick Hazendonk. I'm a landscape architect and IFLA delegate for the Dutch Association for Landscape Architects, and I will guide you more or less through this webinar. So I'm happy to have two excellent speakers in the person of Michael van Buren and Barbara Deutsch. And the kickoff will be done by Bruno Marques, president for IFLA World. So everybody knows the program more or less. We will start with this kickoff and then a presentation by Michael about the 2120 nature-based project. We'll have some discussion about that, a very small pause to relax a bit after an hour of presentation discussion. And then the meeting will follow up with Barbara Deutsch from the Landscape Architecture Foundation, also landscape architect, and I think she will tell us something about the work Landscape Architecture Foundation does with a special focus on their landscape declaration and their work with the new Green Deal, because that also makes us think about the future. And that's what this webinar is about, thinking about the next 25 years and longer of IFLA World and our subject, the role of the discipline of landscape architecture in the development of landscapes in the world. I first give the word to Bruno Marques.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Nick, for the introduction and for facilitating this webinar. It's a pleasure to welcome all of you to our third and final IFA webinar as part of the 75th anniversary celebrations. As you may be aware, the 75th anniversary program has been packed with events that allow us to reflect on the past with a positive outlook so we can actually better understand our present actions and grow, learn, and gain energy to embrace the future. This webinar titled Landscape 2015 Beyond from 75 to 100 Years of IFLA will be future focused, imagining and thinking about the future of our profession and discipline, where we will be as a global federation and the state of our world landscapes. While the world keeps changing at a very quick pace, IFLA and landscape architects across the globe keep fighting the same battles. Pressures of globalization and urbanization, threats to sustainability and food security, hazards derived from climate change and sea level rise, the burdens of modern living on our own health and well-being and social justice, and more recently the pressures from COVID-19 global pandemic. These issues require us to focus on establishing a joint vision for protecting and nurturing our natural and built environments. We have come a long way as a profession, but we still have a long journey ahead of us to give the proper recognition that landscape architecture deserves. We are the most well-equipped profession to deal with the pressures that will define new ways of living and designing for future generations. IFLA, as the only international non-governmental organization representing landscape architects globally, relies on our joint efforts and events such as this one to keep expanding our knowledge and experience. As a global federation, we position ourselves and have allies at the international level like the United Nations, UNESCO, ICOMOS, FAO, and IUCN, among other sister organizations such as UIA, ISOCARP, WFEO, where our expertise is required around the table to strategize about the future of our planet. We are at a point where leadership and stewardship were never as important in the world as they are now. Landscape architects have the knowledge and tools to lead the change and protect our ecosystems for future generations, and IFLA will ensure that we'll keep advancing the profession. Our role as a global federation is to advance the profession of landscape architecture and promote the sustainable management of natural and built environments. For those that are not so aware, IFLA is the body that represents 80 national member associations, and we have more than 100,000 landscape architects in our membership. We are not a small profession, as many believe. According to the International Labour Organization, there are more than 1 million landscape architects worldwide. Across our 5 regions, the mission is to promote the landscape architecture profession within a collaborative partnership of the allied built environment professions, demanding the highest standards of education, training, research, and professional standards. If we look back over the last 12 months, we have celebrated many accolades, particularly around the newly approved International Labour Organization definition for landscape architecture, which is far-reaching and holistic, representing the different facets of our work. We have also rolled out a new global education recognition program to encourage universities to apply and to get the stamp of quality that will be recognized internationally. We also have been very busy securing our global partnerships with UNESCO and ICOMOS and have strengthened our work with several UN agencies. For instance, at the last COP27 for climate change in Egypt, we persuaded the United Nations to establish a landscape architecture-led design framework for climate change and adaptation. We also secured at the last COP15 for biodiversity in Montreal, Canada, with the help of the International Union for Conservation of Nature, the development of a framework based on nature-based solutions that can be applied worldwide. Also, more recently, we signed an MOU with the International Society for Urban Health, a valuable partner of the World Health Organization, so we can promote the importance of landscape architecture in urban settings for health and well-being. And even more recently, at the beginning of June, we got acceptance from the UN Habitat General Assembly to move ahead with an international landscape convention. And in this regard, we're also preparing an action-driven MOU with the UN Habitat that will allow us to better care for our urban environments from a landscape-led perspective. Without landscapes, there won't be sustainable cities. This is just a very quick summary of the key highlights over the last 12 months. We now face critical challenges requiring interdisciplinary thinking, quick action, and solid outcomes. As such, and as a global federation, we are focusing on the following key pillars: climate action and biodiversity, health, well-being, and nature-based solutions, community participation, technology and evidence-based design, food security, and traditional knowledge and indigenous practices. We are facing an unprecedented demand for landscape architects in the world. Many of our professional organizations have observed a shortage of landscape architects. The industry demand for landscape architects exceeds the number of graduates. As a profession, we are also expected to grow by 10% until 2030, double compared to other built environment professions. We have been busy and will continue to be like that for the next 12 months. IFLA will keep raising the profile of the profession internationally. We are now working on global professional standards and registration, allowing landscape architects to travel the world and enrich their knowledge with other ways of thinking and doing. We keep working alongside the many projects that global and intergovernmental organizations have to increase the visibility and advocacy of landscape architecture. IFLA is working hard with emerging countries to assist them in establishing cutting-edge educational programs that can address our future challenges. We're also bringing our academics closer to IFLA. We need academia and professional practice to coexist as a global professional organization. IFLA is a knowledge hub where members can share expertise and propose new ways of doing things. We're also gearing up with our partners for thought-provoking sessions at the upcoming COP for climate change in Dubai to show that we can only overcome some of our challenges if we embrace the power of landscape. The success of IFLA will all depend on the success of all of our members. We don't want to leave anyone behind. For the advancement and recognition of the landscape architecture profession globally, IFLA needs a call for action to keep working alongside member associations, partners, governmental agencies, and international bodies to defend the interests of our profession. For instance, advocacy efforts should emphasize the role of landscape architects in addressing global challenges. Collaborations with international organizations and networks are essential for interdisciplinary cooperation and resource sharing. Promoting knowledge exchange and research within the community will keep practitioners competitive, especially in emerging areas such as climate resilience and social equity. Prioritizing professional development through workshops and education initiatives, along with maintaining global representation, ensures the ongoing relevance and inclusivity of the profession. Ethical and sustainable practices should be actively promoted, emphasizing principles of social responsibility, environmental stewardship, and cultural sensitivity to enhance the profession's reputation. This will allow us to set strategic directions that define the future of our profession, such as climate action and biodiversity. We need landscape architects to continue playing a critical role in designing resilient landscapes to adapt to and mitigate climate change. Regenerative design. We also need landscape architects to continue to focus on actively restoring ecosystems, minimizing harm, and contributing positively to the environment through practices like ecosystem restoration, carbon sequestration, and promoting biodiversity. Urban greening and placemaking. Landscape architects lead in creating green, livable urban spaces by maximizing limited land resources, developing multifunctional green infrastructure, and designing vibrant public areas promoting social interaction, health, and well being. Ecological and biophilic design, the bread and butter of landscape architects, will remain loyal to ecological principles and the design based on natural systems, emphasizing biophilic design to enhance human connection with the natural world. Digital tools and technology. Our professional will continue to embrace digital tools and technologies, utilizing advanced modeling, GIS, remote sensing, artificial intelligence, and virtual reality to enhance stakeholder engagement and communication. Social equity and inclusive design. We will keep prioritizing inclusivity, ensuring landscapes are accessible and meet the needs of diverse communities, addressing issues like equitable access to green spaces and incorporating cultural narratives. And finally, collaboration and interdisciplinary approaches. Landscape architects increasingly collaborate with professionals from varied disciplines to address complex challenges, foster innovation, holistic problem solving, and integrating diverse perspectives. The future of landscape architecture lies in creating sustainable, resilient, and inclusive landscapes that address the pressing environmental and social issues of our time. As I mentioned earlier, this year of celebration, and we have had a program full of events. As all good things come to an end, do not miss the International Landscape Biennial in Barcelona as our closing event of the 75th anniversary program. Please keep an eye on our website for more details and come and join us next year in Istanbul for the 60th IFLA World Council and Congress, Code Red for Earth, where we expect more than 1,500 participants in 5 days packed with activities. We have published the IFLA 75th Anniversary Green Book to mark this important year. This publication sheds new light on IFLA's identity and history while it hopes to reflect the unique diversity that the contemporary landscape profession has to achieve. An important resource you should have in your library, regardless if you are a practitioner, a professor, a future student, or just someone concerned with the future of our planet. Scan these QR codes to order a copy now. Also, if you are interested in the recent professional trends and how landscape architects work globally, feel free to scan these QR codes to get this publication for free. It will provide you very clear insights of the future trends and directions of our profession. To wrap it up, As a profession and as a professional organization, we need to focus on the big picture and be recognized as a thoughtful leader. We should be seen as the interface where landscape architects come to establish and develop their networks, expand their ideas, and meet like minded people. Together, we can advocate and protect the values we believe are important for landscape architects. As architects of the environment, our profession is well prepared to tackle many issues such as climate change and biodiversity by creating sustainable designs that inspire a collective responsibility to preserve and protect our planet for future generations. Like our landscapes and ecosystems, we too are a resilient community. Through our collaborative efforts, we will keep raising the profile of landscape architecture globally. And also feel free to contact me with suggestions and feedback on how IFL can improve its work, but also if you'd like to join many of our working groups and projects. We are an inclusive federation. As more people we have advocating for our profession, a stronger and better impact we will have. IFLA is all of us working together if we want to have a planet to live in. So many thanks for this, and I wish you all a very successful webinar and very fruitful discussions.
Okay, thank you, Bruno, for your short introduction on IFLA. Now we are going after your directions you gave for the future and for the, I could say, rather short-term future ideas we have about the future of our organization and the future of the landscape. We now go into something extraordinary. Some landscape architects are working on the future and they think in 3 generations ahead. I'm talking about the Wageningen group, and Michael van Buren will show how they use their design researches and their research by design in some way to to kick off the debates first in the Netherlands and then in Europe and maybe even on world level about landscape some 100 years in the future. And he will explain how that can be useful for the discussions nowadays and for uh, backing to from the future to nowadays. So, Michael, I won't introduce you. Sorry, Michael, I won't introduce you. You can do it better yourself, knowing what is apt for your presentation and what the people should know. The floor is
Okay.
yours.
Yep. Well, welcome everybody. Nice to see you, or at least to being able to present something to you. I'm going to try to share my screen and hope everything will work out right. Sometimes I have some trouble with this kind of technology, but most of the time it really works. So I hope you see my screen now. Nick, can you confirm that?
Yes, I see some beautiful hands and it's full screen. So,
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Well, my name is Michael van Buren. I work at Wageningen University and Research as a landscape design researcher, I must say. And I'm going to present you some things about our work. And these projects I'm going to show you are mainly focused at trying to get a discussion about what is the future we would really like to see it happen, not to give a prediction of how our landscapes are going to look like, or because I think in such a long time frame that is well, hardly possible, but it's to discuss the future to be able to make better decisions now. So that is about the overall message I want to convey. Well, this picture represents the world today. The world is on fire, but most of our inhabitants continue to play a game of golf. Mostly, at least that's our conclusion, we are too busy fixing short-term problems, and we fail to act on the largest challenge of the 20th century, that is 21st century, that's about climate change and biodiversity. You all know that this is the prediction of, no, the actual illustration of climate change and warming up of our Earth. And it is good to realize that Europe is warming 2 times faster than any other continent in the world. So we are very, very much on, we should be on track of changing things and to start acting. In the summer of 23, all over Europe, the impact of climate change was very visible. The summer was the hottest summer ever measured. So there really is something going on. And this is also an interesting image from the IPCC report reflecting people born in different times, how many more or they are going to really well, experience the changing of our climate. Children that are born now will experience 7 times more heat waves in their lives than we do now, even with the mildest climate scenario. So that is an important message. Also, maybe you know this is about biodiversity. Biodiversity is also a very important thing for us. And sometimes people think we as humans are outside nature, I think. And that's also the story our president told us. We are part of ecology. In a way, of course, we are a species depending in all ways on the forces of nature. And Europe's state of nature is declining very fast due to agricultural activities and urbanizations. Soils, water systems, forests, wetlands are in very bad shape. It's about 14% of the forests are in favorable conservation status, and only 2 to 4% of the primary forest is still remaining. 70% of the soils are degraded, and 80% of the wetlands and floodplains are degraded. And well, maybe you have seen this picture before, also from the Stockholm Resilience Institute, which shows that this 6 out of 9 planetary boundaries we have already crossed. So this is something that is very important for us. In our view, these 2 major developments are closely connected: climate change and biodiversity loss. And our view is also that we have to solve both or solve neither. And for this, I think there are no simple solutions. We need really system transformations and cannot rely only on technological solutions. As the IPCC told us, here is the most concise messages from the report. It is warming, it is up, it's us, we are sure it's bad, but also a very important thing, we can fix it. And I think that is also what the IPCC stated, that in the next decade we have, and we must act to be able to try to meet all these very important issues. And citing former President Barack Obama, yes, we can, but we need something to do. And At first, I want to show you a nature-based future that we developed for our own country, the Netherlands, for over 100 years. And for this, I hope it will work. I'm going to show you a little movie that we made, so you have a short introduction to this project. And later on, I will go to a next level. I will tell you something about our project on Europe in 2120.
This is the Netherlands as we know it. A small country with big challenges. Rising sea levels, loss of biodiversity, and a changing climate. But what will this future look like when we shape it from a nature-based perspective? Welcome to 2120. The Netherlands is a country in which biodiversity prospers. Nature is given free rein and water has space to flow. Climate and energy neutrality are mainstream. Agriculture is sustainable and cities are green. This is what the Netherlands can look like in 100 years according to scientists at Wageningen University and Research. They have sketched the Netherlands of the future, an appealing green country for housing, living, and working. Nature-based solutions are the core of civilization, and the natural system serves as the foundation for our spatial planning. If we develop this vision for 2120, this is what different areas in the country will look like. The seabed, the water, and the surface of the North Sea are used in a sustainable way. Wind farms and floating platforms such as port hubs, solar parks, and hydrogen systems
Ben oui, c'est sûr que moi j'ai une réunion à 15h, donc je préfère démarrer.
Sally, could you put on the sound again?
Nick, I'm asking Michael to unmute. He needs to unmute. He's muted himself, and if he unmutes, the sound will return.
Moi, 8 mois qu'on attend de signer ce contrat. Voilà.
Michael, kun je unmuten?
Oh. What was wrong? Something went wrong?
Je moet het filmpje even opnieuw starten en in het begin, het geluid viel weg. Doordat je gemute werd. Sorry.
Ik ga het proberen, ja? Sorry. My excuses for the inconvenience, people. Is it working now, Nick?
This is the Netherlands as we know it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
A small country with big challenges. Rising sea levels, loss of biodiversity, and a changing climate. But what will this future look like when we shape it from a nature-based perspective? Welcome to 2120. The Netherlands is a country in which biodiversity prospers. Nature is given free rein and water has space to flow. Climate and energy neutrality are mainstream. Agriculture is sustainable and cities are green. This is what the Netherlands can look like in 100 years, according to scientists at Wageningen University and Research. They have sketched the Netherlands of the future, an appealing green country for housing, living, and working. Nature-based solutions are the core of civilization, and the natural system serves as the foundation for our spatial planning. If we develop this vision for 2120, this is what different areas in the country will look like. The seabed, the water, and the surface of the North Sea are used in a sustainable way. Wind farms and floating platforms such as port hubs, solar parks, and hydrogen systems will be established off the coast. Additionally, more food will be produced at sea, such as oysters, mussels, and seaweed. Lower lands are elevated by allowing silting up of polders. With double dikes and sand nourishments, the Netherlands will defend itself against the rising sea level. The clay soils of the Netherlands are very suitable for high-value circular agriculture. In 2120, most of the fertile ground will be used for plant-based food production. A healthy soil, strip cultivation, natural crop protection, and optimal use of waste streams will contribute to healthy food at an honest price. Freshwater reservoirs will store surplus rainwater in the winter for use in the summer. Separating fresh from brackish water will be crucial for the development of separate cultivation and strengthening nature. Wide flood defense landscapes will guarantee flood protection. Double dikes will serve as a defense for the most vulnerable low-lying areas. River discharge is increasing in variation. Providing rivers with even more space ensures a better discharge at higher water levels and provides water storage for dry periods. Marshy zones will counterpressure undesirable streams of water through the dike, store water, and increase biodiversity. Fertile river clay soils provide opportunities for circular agriculture, in which dairy farming, field farming, and fruit cultivation interact in circular systems. In 2120, peat marshes in the West will store carbon and create valuable natural environments. Wet cultivation will provide for natural products, biomass, fibers, isolation, and construction material, potting soil, medicine, animal food, meat, and cheese. Under all circumstances, infrastructure at higher areas will provide space for new types of mobility. Inhabitants of Northwest Europe eat less meat, which is why less livestock is needed. In the next decades, water management of higher sandy soils is redesigned to retain and store more water. This will increase the replenishment of groundwater. The natural flow of streams have been restored. Agriculture is nature inclusive and climate proof with drought resistant crops, agroforestry, and food forests. Cities are developed on higher sandy soils to anticipate on rising sea level. Forests are doubled to store carbon and provide sustainable material for construction. In 100 years, Dutch cities are green. Parks and other public green spaces make cities more climate resistant. This is important for cooling and the sponge capacity of cities to manage rainwater. In city centers, cars are replaced by sustainable transportation. Constructions are built with wood, so even buildings become carbon storages. Green rooftops and facades appear everywhere. This will make cities appealing places to live. Our vision of 2120 shows that the Netherlands does not need to surrender to the sea, but that it is possible to create a sustainable and green future. This nature-based approach can be applied to any country or region. Use this principle to develop your own vision of the future and show that climate and biodiversity approaches offer enormous opportunities. Imagine what the world could look like if we start shaping it from a nature-based perspective today. Do you want to know more about the Netherlands in 2120 and read about our worldwide nature-based solutions? Please visit wur.eu/Netherlands 2120.
Okay, that is the movie explaining our perspective for the Netherlands in 2120. And to give a little bit of background of what our most important starting point for making this perspective is this figure. You all know the 17 Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations, and I think it's very important to realize that in our in those 17 goals are not all the same, do not all have the same value when you look at it trying to realize them. And that is explained and illustrated by the scheme at the right side of this slide, the so-called wedding cake model, also from the Stockholm Resilience Center. And they argued that for a healthy biosphere, it is essential that we take the biosphere as a starting point. When the green and the blue goals from the Sustainable Development Goals are not fulfilled, then, our society nor our economy will be able to prosper. So we must really realize that biosphere is conditional to all what we as humans do. We humans need the planet, but unfortunately for us, the planet doesn't really need us. And in our perspective that we showed in this movie, we also found that many people liked it very much. In early 2020, just before COVID, our project went really viral. It was in all newspapers. We were interviewed on radio and TV, and we've discussed our vision with politicians, policymakers, businesses, and citizens. And now, almost 4 years later, still on a weekly basis, we are somewhere talking about this project somewhere in our country. And the major lessons we've learned from this is that we experienced that among the general public, a hopeful perspective is really being looked forward. So I also think that is one of the reasons that so many people are still asking us to tell this story and to be inspired by what we have accomplished and what the main message is in this way of thinking. And beware, and I think you noticed that looking at the movie, the things we try to put forward are all existing possible solutions that have been realized on maybe on a detailed scale, but are ways of dealing with this big challenges we have using the forces of nature, a nature-based perspective. Last year, we also tried to look at Europe as a whole, and we asked ourselves, can we imagine a nature-based development for Europe? And of course, that is triggered by our project for the Netherlands. Many people asked us, okay, but the Netherlands is only a very, very small part in the northwestern part of Europe. But and we are so much depending on all processes at a bigger scale. So can we imagine a nature-based future for Europe as a whole? And this is why we tried to deliver a nature-based perspective for Europe. And as I told you before, also to overcome the fact that Europe is one of the most rapidly changing parts of the world because of climate change, and the biodiversity loss is this big. So we really need something to improve in that. And we hope the nature-based solutions could really be an interesting and good way of promoting that kind of development. We gathered about 50 students from our university from all different disciplines, different countries, and we started designing in a 2-day session. We had a preliminary result that we discussed in Brussels with a couple of European policymakers, and we presented this in September as our Mansholt lecture. That is the yearly lecture done by our university for people in the European Parliament and beyond in Brussels. And developing this perspective for Europe, we started this design process in 5 different eco-regions to be able to look at the major differences and processes all over the landscapes of Europe. This is also the 5 groups that the students worked on in their 2-day design atelier. And for this, we followed 5 guiding principles. The first is biosphere as a cornerstone for Europe's future, in which water and soil is a very important guiding principle to follow. Of course, we need an adaptive and resilient development, working with nature and continuously adapting to this climate change and warming world is very important. And we think that the nature-based perspective should try to use ecological processes in a wise way and not only fighting it with our technology. A climate positive and circular bioeconomy is really an important thing that would imply a paradigm shift that we think is, well, very much necessary, given the fact of the very very severe challenges we are meeting. A nature positive society is that we should try to regenerate biodiversity and nature inclusiveness as the norm. So it is also something that for all people it should be available and should be doable. So it should be inclusive and just, locally embedded, and cherishing the different cultural differences all over Europe. And to be to state as well, what we did is only a first kind of teaser of what we think should be done at an European level. But I will continue showing the way we have been working. This is the future map we developed for Europe, in which these 5 different layers constitute a new green development for our whole continent. I will explain something about water, soil, food and green cities to show you how we have been thinking. Well, of course, from our principle that we should try to get healthy water in soils, this is the first and far most important basic layer for a new development, in which green landscapes can act as sponges to retain water when it is necessary, and to get better conditions when in summer periods and drier periods, to overcome droughts. There's more space for rivers, not only to be able to meet peak discharges in the rivers, but also to develop green ecological corridors, and of course to restore wetlands and install nature-based coastal protection is a way of win-win, in which both biodiversity and well, the safety of our peoples can be the result. Of course, also very important is, okay, how are we going to deal with the transition in agriculture? Of course, we should produce food, and in our perspective, that should be more food based on not on animals, but on plants, and main plant-based food. But an important thing for agriculture is also that it will be able to provide the raw material for all kind of other needs, like textiles, building houses, making furniture, and provide in any other things we need, because we think that using agricultural projects for that, bio-based materials, that would really trigger a real circular economy. And of course, we have a lot of seas that can also be interesting for new ways of food production and stewardships for many people in and around our countries. Concerning the urban development, we think the development should be focused at walkable 15-minute cities with a lot of green, and to be able to at least accommodate basic travel all over Europe. A high-speed network should be developed in the next decades. Well, this could sparkle a development, a green development for Europe. And again, it's not the blueprint, but it is more a call to action and to work together on a pan-European scale in getting a interesting and better way of coping with the big challenges we have in our continent. I'm going to skip a little bit, but I show you some of the graphs in which we try to explain on a more detailed scale what kind of nature-based solutions we have been working out in the different parts of Europe. For instance, for the Mediterranean region, we think we can also use many existing technologies and ways of dealing with nature, developing new nature areas, both on land and sea, and thus creating better conditions for both humans and animals. Well, we need, our conclusion is we need a long-term vision and, of course, short-term action. For this, the EU is at the critical moment in history. Not only leadership in becoming first climate neutral continent, that is what the EU wants in the world, but also to become a global leader in nature-based solutions and an ambassador for future generations. Here you see what we want to try to accomplish. There are different pathways leading to a better future, and we are convinced that we should and we can follow the green lines to become a more and better sustainable, to get a better and sustainable development. Oops. We need a long-term vision and short-term action. And this is a process we hope to, to be able to start with many of you to work from a local, regional way of dealing with problems, but connected to policy making and making inspiring visions at higher levels and vice versa. And I think that is something we strongly believe in, that this will be able to accelerate the development of our continent, and that we really should start it right now, from bottom to top and the other way around. And well, before ending, I really would still thank all our students and experts that have contributed to this vision. And well, you thank for your attention for now. And when you need any more information, don't hesitate to contact me. Well, thanks.
So thank you, Michael, for your excellent and inspiring presentation of this way of working. I don't see any questions in my chat, but maybe that's due to the technical problems we have. I apologize anyway for that. So if nobody of the audience has any questions, I myself could raise some questions to you, Michael. Could you explain a bit more about the role of landscape planners and landscape architects in the process? Because it was done by a big group of scientists and experts of WURB.
Well, yes, of course. You need a lot of interdisciplinary work to be able to overview the different aspects of the challenges we are confronted with. But we also need people who are able to make a synthesis out of all these different sources of information, ideas, and try to and be able to visualize and to reflect on it. And that is exactly the role that we have been playing as landscape designers in that process. And well, sharing what our chairman Bruno has said about, well, okay, what could be the leading role or the added value of landscape architects? I think that is very, very important. Even in my own institute, we are with a group of now something like 5 landscape architects in a research institute with 350 people. And well, I have been working here now for over 10 years. And only after we came out with this Netherlands in 2120 project 4 or 5 years ago, many other experts and people, contractors for the research that we do, have been convinced that they have seen what we as landscape architects are able to do in getting all these things together and making options for the future, so that you can really discuss on it, and you can also get a better image of what we want to or could focus at, or could contribute to
Okay.
getting solutions. I think that is
Yes, thank you, Michael. That's rather clear and well explained, I think. And we got also a question from Barbara, which is, I think, directly connected to what you explained. She asks, how did you get the attention of government leaders to adopt the vision?
yeah. Well, I told you that we made this Europe in 2120 vision, and we delivered the Mansholt lecture, and one of the most important EU people working on the Green Deal, that is the Diederik Samson. He used to be the right hand of Frans Timmermans, and now of our new Dutch representative in the EU board. And he really was very happy with it. And in fact, he also saw our vision of the Netherlands in 2120, and that was sparkled him to get in contact with us 4 years ago. And he said, okay, we need we need more visionary ideas about what the Green Deal could lead to. And so that was his reason, and that was also the reason that we worked out this Europe in 2120 perspective. In a Dutch level, I think it was also very interesting to know that we had many discussions and still inspired different people, policymakers on all levels of scale. And we have been working on, quite a number of projects now to realize it, and to get elaborations of this way of thinking in real life governmental policies.
Yes, maybe explain it to Barbara. The work that Michael does is financed by the Ministry of Agriculture. And by the way, I'm working also on the Ministry of Agriculture as a policy officer. So they have programs financed by the government. And one part of the program is a kind of free innovative working. So we finance the program, Metropolitan Solutions, and with the money they get there, they can do more or less free from the policy work. And they started this project, and then maybe even Michael can explain more, but even by surprise, suddenly it went viral. They brought it to the press, but in a moment, in a dull moment, you could say, when the press needs stuff, but it exploded and it became viral. So when all the media are full of these proposals, so we at the ministry were positively shocked, but the institute also was happily surprised. But everybody was talking, writing, and so they got lots of questions to explain it. So then they did their roadshow through the Netherlands, and they are still going on, I think. So
still going on, yeah.
Maybe
And
also
one of the other,
maybe you can say something about this big scientific program that's now run.
To get the main message, we got a 110 million euro project with 25 other organizations in our country to elaborate on this nature-based solutions way of thinking of future in the Netherlands. So the next 10 years we will be able to to get more knowledge and to combine existing knowledge in really give people the right tools and information and knowledge in practice to be able to realize this kind of ideas and nature-based solutions. So that is a very, at least for us, a very hopeful and promising development.
Okay, before
Any
we
more
stop,
questions?
yes, we have a question of Hans Polman, who is asking about what happens with an increasing population with your ideas of nature-based solutions and dealing aspects as carbon dioxide, nitrogen gases, etc.
Well, we think that in the Netherlands, even in the Netherlands, though we are very densely populated already, but we still have the means and the opportunities to be able to host more people. And on a European level, I think it is something we can be done as long as we can use the knowledge and the ecological knowledge to find good locations and to develop ecologically wisely laid out areas for housing. I think we can really do that. But it is also something we should try and look if we can really accomplish it. But and it is also something, in my view at least, it's unavoidable that overall in Northwestern Europe, we will get people from other countries with more severe consequences based on climate change. So we really have to.
Yeah, I could add even this long-term work you are doing, of course, have difficulties with prospections of demographics, etc. So physical things are difficult but doable, but demographics are very complicated. But the prospects are that we will have less population. At the first, less indigenous population, but then coming in people from abroad. And bigger problems are, what are these people doing? So nature-based, we live, we can survive, but how can we manage that people go from a protein-based diet to an animal protein diet to a plant protein diet? Otherwise, we won't have enough food and enough resources to help everybody with enough resources.
Yeah. Well, that of course that is a big discussion that cannot be answered in a few moments. But I think it is a very big challenge that we should face and try to find solutions as good as possible. And maybe at the global scale, the number of people a little bit further in our century will go down. But I think being countries with still a quite mild climate change in the north and in the western part of Europe, at least, we are going to see that people from Mediterranean countries may come and try to find a way of living in our country. And then we need space and for them to live and to work and whatever. But I think that is not an easy problem, but also an interesting challenge to try to find out the solutions by design as well.
Okay. I give you one last question before we go into a very small pause, I think. There is a question of Eda. Don't know if you can read it, but she talks about how to deal with thermal comfort, climate adaptation questions on smaller scales, and what is the relation of big scale scenarios to this smaller scale?
Yeah, well, that is also something that I'm not a climate specialist, so that's the first disclaimer I have to make. And but of course, we know all that things at smaller scale and bigger scales are very much connected, and that is also where we as landscape architects have a very, I think, being accustomed to working through scales, as we say, sometimes on the small scale, go up, look at relations at that scale, and go down again. And I think this cyclic approach of that we also need that to be able to try to use both the changes that can be or will happen at a larger scale and at the micro scale. So I think that is also something we should always take into our consideration. And as far as I know, I think that is also something that is very much common to our profession. So we should also make use of that.
Maybe I can add to the things you mark about scales that at Wageningen University, I don't know exactly, but the professor that's there sharing at this moment, she is really specialized in
The microclimate,
heat stress, etc. And so I'm sure they will have modeling, technical modeling on the micro and meso scale. She did her own PhD some years ago on city plazas and micro scale modeling. So maybe you could go there for more help and information.
And
with this question,
modeling on different scales, that is always an interesting and very complicated thing. That is, as far as I know.
Yes. Okay, with this question, I want to finish this part of the webinar, and then we stop 5 minutes, and then we go on with the next speaker, and the questions that are still pending and people want to ask, we can bring in after the next speaker, where we have half an hour programmed to discuss and to debate on both speakers. Thank you, and we see you in I think about 5 minutes to have a small sanitation pause and to rest a bit from the screen. Thank you. Okay, we have passed our 5 minutes pause by now. I hope everybody is back, everybody who wants to follow us in the rest of the meeting. Later on, I hope that Micha can explain us a little bit about a challenge that's going on for this approach they have. They have an approach in Bangladesh where they invite students all over the world to participate. Maybe in the end he can explain a bit on that. But by now I want to invite and introduce Barbara Deutsch from the Landscape Architect Foundation. We found her willing to explain about the foundation, about the work they are doing in the United States the last years, mostly also related to the task for landscape architects and how they can be major agents in society on future thinking, future working, and solving the transitions we are confronted with. So Barbara, can I invite you to start your presentation and invite this into the world of Landscape Architecture Foundation?
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Yep.
Yes, I hear you. We hear and see you.
Thank you, Nick, is that how you say your name?
Yes, excellent.
Okay. And Bruno and Michael and all of you IFLA members who work so hard. And I know you're volunteers, and it's really uplifting to know that, to be reminded that we're not alone, that we have each other out there, and to really appreciate all the knowledge and experience and different ways of doing things that we could all learn from each other. So I'm honored and delighted to learn and share today. I'm going to present, as Nick said, about LAF, kind of borrowing from Michael and his fabulous previous presentation about a long-term vision and the short-term actions that we're taking to help to implement the vision. So with that, let me pull up my slides. And I want to make sure I optimize for the and I just added this slide to kick off, added this slide during the break to just agree that we all know that no matter how we define sustainability, right, we cannot achieve it without considering landscape. So zero carbon, zero waste, net zero water, biodiversity, livability, all those metrics. And so having a big picture view of landscape and our value, and recognizing, I think we are very clear that if there was the age of engineering and the age of architecture, that this is the age of landscape architecture, and our time to help contribute this landscape approach to solving all of our climate, biodiversity, livability issues, to create that livable, sustainable, equitable planet that we all aspire to. And I just want to share with you a little bit about the history of LAF so you understand the context within which, I'll be sharing our work. And LAF was founded in 1966 here in the US in response to the environmental crisis. So our air in all the cities looked like this. The rivers were septic, or the Great Lakes were dying. The rivers had salt infusion, or were sewage channels, and a very visible pollution. And it was a time when the U.S. was at war, and it was also the civil rights movement. And so this was part of the environmental movement, out of which in the 60s and the 70s, the U.S. had federal environmental legislation that we had not seen prior to that or since then, in terms of the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, the NEPA, doing the environmental assessments and all that federal legislation that came out of the 60s in the U.S. And bloomed in the 70s, of which there's been backlash to since the 80s. And so I'm hoping the pendulum will be swinging the other way. And it's certainly helpful to know that we have partners around the world who share our interests and can lead by example to help us here in the US. So because certainly 50 years later, at our 50-year anniversary in 2016, recognizing the pollution is not just litter on the ground or the air you can't breathe, but it's also the greenhouse gases and climate pollution, and then the biodiversity crisis. So again, LAF is working to develop an agenda for the discipline stemming from our history in 1966, when the first thing that LAF did as an organization was tap Ian McHarg to develop an agenda for the discipline to make its vital contribution towards solving the environmental crisis. And everything I'm going to show you today is on our website, so you have those resources available to you. They're all free and accessible to anyone around the world. But this declaration of concern is the blueprint for which we updated in 2016 with our summit that I'll share with you. And from that, some of the key initiatives and what we've been doing to take this long-term vision into short-term action. And so the first part defines the issues of the time. As I mentioned earlier, the middle part of the declaration talks about the agency of landscape architects to help solve those defining issues. And the last part is the call to action for the discipline on what it needs to do to increase the influence and impact of landscape architects to solve the defining issues of our time. And so it really was a declaration of concern. A sense of crisis has brought us together. There's no single solution. Those who plan for the future must understand natural resources and processes. These are I like this, these are the basis of life and the prerequisite for planning the good life. And that landscape architects are essential in maintaining this vital connection between man and nature, which with more and more development, we get separated from nature and each other. I think some of the key outcomes, the key call to action was that, the solution to the environmental crisis demands the skills of many professions, but so that landscape architects may make their vital contribution, they proposed this 4-point program to bridge the gap between knowledge and practice, looking at recruitment of the new generation and more landscape architects, quality education programs, research, the importance of research. And I thought this was prescient before the internet, but a nationwide system for communicating the results of research, example, and good practice. But again, this plan was to multiply the effectiveness of a limited number of landscape architects while producing more trained people to cope with the future of the environment. And here in the US, we have, depends on how you measure it, but maybe 20,000 landscape architects. We have 250,000 architects and 400,000 plus civil engineers. So it is important that we are smart and strategic, again, to multiply the effectiveness of our relative limited number of landscape architects. And I think IFLA is important for all of us to connect and not only multiply our effectiveness, but also feel that we're not alone and we can learn from each other and help. I think the 1966 Declaration of Concern, you could change a few pronouns. I change it from the focus on the American landscape to a global landscape and global issues, but it's still pretty prescient today. So I invite you to have a look at it and the details. But out of this came LAF's, our mission was always to support the environment. And the way we supported the environment that was different than all the other environmental nonprofit organizations was to look at designers of the environment or landscape architects and increase their influence and impact to support the environment. And LAF's core strategies coming out of that agenda was research, scholarships to support the next generation, and leadership, both in strategic foresight for the discipline, as well as transformational leadership to integrate a landscape architecture approach into society to multiply our effectiveness. So for our 50-year anniversary in 2016, it's hard to imagine we're coming up on our 60-year anniversary soon, excuse me. We convened a summit on landscape architecture and the future and brought in thought leaders from around the world as best we could. There were a good 70 of them over 2 days, which responded to the original 1966 Declaration of Concern and offered their vision for the future. And so out of that came, I'm going to attempt to show this video now, so you can hear what some of it was said. Awesome.
Make it full screen would help. Great.
Awesome.
5 million people a month are moving to cities looking for a better life.
The Anthropocene age is, of course, upon us, and we, humans, are its defining species.
If there is the age of engineering and then there is the age of architecture, this is the age of landscape architecture.
We are nearing the point of no return when it comes to reversing or even mitigating the adverse effects of climate change.
Not all people are being affected evenly. dealing with public space in the most poorest areas. I think it's a social equalizer, and also it's a degree of environmental justice.
Despite the impassioned plea of our colleagues 50 years ago, landscape architects have mostly been peripheral to large environmental agendas.
We need to be developing contemporary aesthetic solutions to the contemporary problems.
I believe that we need to build political capital to make change.
We need to promote design as a field of inquiry.
We need to bring more people into our profession. We need to diversify our thinking.
The charge is serious. The charge is urgent.
We don't know where we're heading exactly, but we are going to live through fantastic adventures with this discipline. The moment is now.
All right, so that gives you highlights of some of the things that were said. There is a longer 15-minute documentary that you can see. I want you to again remember that this was 2016, and just a little context in the US, that the discipline was not even talking about climate change. And so what came out of this summit was that we recognized that the key issues of our time are climate change, inequity, mass species extinction, on top of consumption, rapid urbanization, and this sense of urgency that everyone knows something's happening, but what are we doing and how do we make our vital contribution? And so some of the other key ideas were that, I think Michael said it earlier, or someone in so many words, you know, the earth is going to turn with or without the human species, but humans, if we are to survive, need to be a constructive part of nature. And that we also recognize our unique training and talents as landscape architects, right? No one else is trained as we are as designers of both natural and cultural systems, designers of natural resources, natural processes, and working with people and all living things. So in that way, we are positioned as synthesizers and collaborators. We also, what else came out was to recognize that there are many ways to practice here in the US, you know, and that those are different. We need people, landscape architects, infiltrated into many parts of the decision-making process. So not only in private practice, but in public practice, in federal, state, and local agencies, in nonprofit organizations, in research institutes, and all there are many people working on this, and they will work on it with or without us. And so how do we infiltrate, so to speak, and position ourselves as these synthesizers and collaborators with this unique training and way of approaching this landscape architecture approach to coming up with solutions. We also recognized that coming out of the conversation was the need to do more larger scale work, and which is why I love what Michael, you shared with that vision for the whole country, and how that could, I think there was the work from Rebuild by Design here after Hurricane Sandy in New York City, and I think those types of efforts really helped people vision and imagine what the future can be. The Weitzman School of Design at University of Pennsylvania recently held a symposium on mega eco projects. I encourage you to look at it, and I think it was inspiring to see large projects that are happening around the world, whether it's the Green Wall across Africa, or from Yosemite to Yukon, that whole wildlife corridor, or works in every continent that are happening, some with landscape architects and some without. Again, but the opportunity is there. And the idea, again, is to inform decision-making and policy. And a key message that came out of the conference was, the summit was also that it's not good enough to be a good designer. You need to be an active designer. And there are many ways to act, but find your voice, and now's the time to assert it. So with these ideas from the summit, we formulated the new landscape declaration. And so I wanted to share that with you. And actually what we do is read it when we go out on the road to share it with people. So you see our values and how we've translated the Declaration of Concern into the 21st century call to action. So across borders and beyond walls, from city centers to the last wilderness, humanity's common ground is the landscape itself. Food, water, oxygen, everything that sustains us comes from and returns to the landscape. And what we do to our landscapes, we ultimately do to ourselves. The profession charged with designing this common ground is landscape architecture. After centuries of mistakenly believing we could exploit nature without consequence, we have now entered an age of extreme climate change marked by rising seas, resource depletion, desertification, and unprecedented rates of species extinction. Set against the global phenomena of accelerating consumption, urbanization, and inequity, these influences disproportionately affect the poor and will impact everyone everywhere. Simultaneously, there is profound hope for the future as we begin to understand the true complexity and holistic nature of the Earth system, and as we begin to appreciate humanity's role as integral to its stability and productivity, we can build a new identity for society as a constructive part of nature. The urgent challenge before us is to redesign our communities in the context of their bioregional landscapes, enabling them to adapt to climate change and mitigate its root causes. As designers versed in both environmental and cultural systems, landscape architects are uniquely positioned to bring related professions together into new alliances to address complex social and ecological problems. Landscape architects bring different and often competing interests together so as to give artistic physical form and integrated function to the ideals of equity, sustainability, resiliency, and democracy. As landscape architects, we vow to create places that serve the higher purposes of social and ecological justice for all peoples and all species. We vow to create places that nourish our deepest needs for communion with the natural world and with one another. We vow to serve the health and well-being of all communities. To fulfill these promises, we will work to strengthen and diversify our global capacity as a profession. We will work to cultivate a bold culture of inclusive leadership, advocacy, and activism in our ranks. We will work to raise awareness of landscape architecture's vital contribution. We will work to support research and champion new practices that result in design innovation and policy transformation. And we close the declaration like they did Ian McHarg and company did in 1966 by pledging our services and seeking commitment from those who share our concern. So the key today, so to speak, from the declaration, it's a clear call to action for all landscape architects and landscape architecture organizations, with key strategies to increase public awareness, diversity, equity, inclusion in our ranks, the call to action to collaborate, get outside of our choir and collaborate, innovate, and activate, to work at a larger scale and higher up in the decision-making process. When I talk about the Green New Deal Studio, we'll see how this is a way to help do that. To advocate for a landscape architecture approach to planning, design, and development, to use our unique talent and training as landscape architects to be a part of the solutions. Once the declaration was formed, we went on the road and talked to over 6,000 landscape architects at universities and firms across the country. And what we heard, people were so excited to be heard, and there was this pent-up frustration that the declaration helped them see, yes, we have a role, they have agency, this is the plan to help us get more involved and in the game and more impactful. But so many people, it's so, like we said, it's so big and overwhelming. They felt, how can I really make a difference? And so we heard a lot of ways that people are already making a difference. And then we put together this kind of starter action plan for those who don't know where to start, for those individuals who don't know where to start, to give them a framework to work with. So I'll just briefly go over these categories, which you can apply in whatever way, shape, or form you are practicing. Here, the video is starting again. Let me go, hold on, let me go back to, I don't know where. Okay.
It tries to become a multimedia event.
Yes. Okay. No, I've already showed that. Let me go back to the PowerPoint. Wait. Okay. So screen share. Can you see the PowerPoint? And all right. Do you see the screen again? This is our action plan. Can you hear me?
Everything okay?
Okay, great. Thanks. I can't see you for some reason. All right. So the first point of the action plan is to up your game. Like theoretically designing for sustainability. I mean, landscape architecture is that, but what do we need to do differently to design for climate, for equity, for justice, for decarbonization, jobs, and justice? So really work on building your knowledge, skills, and credentials, understand climate science and how to design for it, build your cultural literacy, travel, learn about different ways of looking and doing things, learn the language of developers and politicians, listen to what the younger generation is talking about. So that's kind of the number one way to up your game. Two, design with a purpose. We have our paying client, but the earth is also our client, and design makes a difference. So design with nature. Do everything you can on every project to think big. Look beyond the site boundaries and what is asked for you, and reframe projects as problem-solving opportunities. Listen, practice empathetic design, make landscape architecture indispensable. Number three, go for it. This is the work, set performance objectives and evaluate your work. If you set objectives for sustainability, then you can design for them. You know, really go for zero carbon, zero waste, and equity on all your projects. Stretch further to regenerate, use data to innovate, and promote the value of a landscape approach. Number four, walk the talk. So that's lead by example at home and in the office through your work. Part number five is to partner. You can't do this alone. And that's how others learn the value of what a landscape architecture approach is. Six, future-proof. Work upstream to influence policy and planning. And work on that visioning. I loved how Michael, you showed creating that vision, and then share that vision. And then people, again, who can help implement the vision, that's what they need. They need to be able to see it. So use your tools there and technology. 7, use your voice. If you see something, say it. Speak for the land, the water, and all living things. Speak for those not at the table and make sure they're included next time. I think is really important. 8, get involved. There's many ways to act, as I said. Sometimes just the slog of what I call the grit advocacy, where you understand the system and in your day-to-day work, then figure out where the interventions need to be. This is not billable time, but if it's it's important if you want to change the system. Of course, donate and vote. Donate to those organizations, not just LAF, but of course, or other environmental organizations that are doing good work on behalf of landscape architecture and our goals on the environment. And then vote, support candidates that represent your priorities for the environment and social equity. So that's our action plan. And again, many ways to implement that, but just putting a framework together to get people started. And what we did as an organization was take that lens and put it over all our programs, operations, and governance structure. So our research programs through our case study development and a landscape performance series, and our independent research grants, focus on climate and equity. And now we've added focusing more on biodiversity, our scholarships to support the next generation. We've added a lot more awards through our financial awards, our Olmsted Scholars Program, which recognizes leadership and students. And then we added and building this network of, we have over 1,000 Olmsted Scholars now. And then we added a new program to focus on supporting BIPOC students or students of color to stay in school, graduate, and enter practice, which we just launched last year, which provides not just one-year scholarships, but $10,000 awards throughout their education, which I'm envious that, well, let's just say the cost of education in the US is horrific. And so if we want landscape architects, we need students. So this is an important strategy for LAF to support students, and scholarships alone will not support students of color. They need internships and experience and a portfolio and a network and access to mentors. So this program puts those three things together to support students. And I'm delighted to recognize we started, BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, People of Color. We started with Black students as they are the least represented in the US. And so we had 4 winners and 5 finalists last year, and just selected another 9 that we announced last week. And so we have 18 students in the program now, and they are amazing. We had them at our board meeting in June, and so delighted, had their internships, all the internship providers. We had 45 applications. It was a great program. So this is a new program that came out of the call to action for LA, how we interpreted the call to action from the new landscape declaration. Another new program that we announced was the new leadership development program. And this is open to international practitioners. So please check it out. And if you have any questions, let us know. But it's $25,000 award to take a quarter of your time to work on a project that is transformational to practice, landscape architecture practice. And then that project is also an organizing construct to develop your transformational leadership skills. So this is not skills on how to run your firm or how to manage a project. This is how to transform society, recognizing the need for deep transformational leadership in our society from a landscape perspective. And so need to update this slide. We have another 6 to add on, and soon another 6 more. But these fellows, again, have projects ranging, it's really inspiring, on all the social and environmental issues, anything from homelessness to green schoolyards to AI to, Pamela Conrad with her Pathway Landscape Carbon Calculator, approaching these issues from a landscape perspective. And so clearly we invest in these individuals who go out and change the world from a landscape perspective. I'll give you, Pamela, Diana right below her on the left. She worked for Sasaki. She's now the deputy director of urban design and sustainability for the city of Boston, reporting directly to Mayor Wu. And you can bet that any of the RFPs going out of the city of Boston to meet their sustainable and equity plan have a landscape approach to them. So again, the multiplier effect of investment in these individuals has been extraordinary. So that's how we've been integrating those call to action from the new landscape declaration into our core programs. We had a separate initiative called the Green New Deal Super Studio, which emerged as a way to help take this long-term vision into short-term action, and to take all the calls to action and give landscape architects a tool to create their own table, develop their own agency to make an impact. And so I think you're all familiar with this, but for those who aren't, I will just briefly go over what it is. But it was an effort that recognizing that a national climate plan, if we would ever be so lucky to have one here, but a national climate plan like the Green New Deal will be understood by most people through the landscapes, buildings, infrastructures, and public works agenda that it inspires. So there's an essential role for designers to build this agenda. So we don't have one plan, but we do have a lot of infrastructure funding in the last couple of years that starts to hopefully come together to manifest into a larger outcome. And so what is the role of landscape architects to build this agenda? So that was the point with the Green New Deal Super Studio to start that conversation. I want to recognize that this was in partnership with the McHarg Center, the Columbia Center for the Resilient Cities and Landscapes, IFLA and IFLA joined us, and it was certainly the Super Studio was part of a larger initiative. The Super Studio was to build content, a body of work, and then we had what we called a bridge plan, which was a reflection of that body of work of where we are as a discipline for designing for jobs, justice, and decarbonization. Again, the goal of the Super Studio was not to get the Green New Deal legislation passed. It was to take the ideas in the Green New Deal of jobs, justice, and decarbonization, and how do we design for them as landscape architects. And so to critically reflect on that body of work, and then have a summit, a follow-up summit, which would help frame the political context for designers so that they could take action to advance and implement their ideas from the Super Studio. So at a glance, the Super Studio was a national call and conversation on design and the ideas in the Green New Deal back in 2020 and 2021. It was an open call. As outlined, there was a brief that was put together. This was building on a studio that Billy Fleming taught at University of Pennsylvania, Weitzman School of Design. And then he had a symposium on designing the Green New Deal. Kate Orff, who was on our board, and I attended, and we, Richard Weller from Penn, and we thought, this is great studio, we should scale it. LAF can scale it, right, for everybody. So that's the partnership that came to be, to have this Super Studio for anyone to participate. And we had never done this, so we didn't know if we'd have 10 studios or 100 studios. So we had 182 studios and over 3,000 participants, and also professional studios. We had other studios from around the world who weren't even in the US. We also had a third of them were architecture and planning, urban design and planning studios. The net result was, well, there are a lot of net results, but 670 projects were submitted by the June 30 deadline. Every single project was reviewed and curated and available on we have a third website, the gndsuperstudio.com website, They're all also archived on JSTOR, which is free and accessible to everyone. And that so we have the content, the body of work, and now we start the conversation about what this meant. What did we learn? So here are all the universities across the country who participated, as well as you can see those outside the US. These, again, the projects are all on our website. Lots of good projects. We curated a representative sample of 55 projects across the country of different scales, types of benefits, and categorize them. This was really, I'm not going to underestimate how hard it was to make the body of work legible. And so we came up with these 6 categories and organized the representative projects within each of these categories. Again, all these projects are on JSTOR, and we had an exhibit as well. And then we had a Super Studio showcase where we reflected on the program and the body of work. And this was a webinar, and it's also available on our website. And these are some of the takeaways that we need to, because I will say that 70–80% of the projects, we had a whole range of projects from very practical to very futuristic, but most of the projects were kind of business as usual. And so that was a key takeaway for us, that we, again, what do we need to do to design differently for jobs, justice, and decarbonization? And so here are some of the key takeaways. One is to focus on the people who were going to be displaced, show the things as a result, the vision of different alternatives and outcomes, and then show what could be, but inclusive of the people who live there. Quantify your solutions. You want to inform policy, they need data. So help them make the case. You need to represent your work in many different ways. And one of the ways that we've been working on at the Landscape Architecture Foundation through the Landscape Performance Series is showing the value of your work in with performance benefits. And so be able to show that and help the decision makers, the policy makers, make the case. Adapt what we do. Adapt it to different conditions. Know your audience. Don't be connected contextually. Again, use representation to show the benefits to people or how it's affecting people as a part of your interventions. And then upscale these ideas, make them bigger, work more upstream. Don't forget the big picture when you're working on a site scale project. Here are some additional more takeaways. Again, the policy.
Sorry, Barbara, could you more or less start resuming the whole? Because it's very interesting, and just these things are what we want to talk about, but please, because we are running out of time a bit.
Oh, okay. Okay. So these are the things that, how much more time do you want me to have?
I was planning to finish with all the delay we had about 4 o'clock. So.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. So these are the things we can end here to show, things that we need to work on with our design as landscape architects. Let me see what I had left. I did want to say that the Super Studio model is a way to operationalize many goals in the new landscape declaration. It was an educational tool for students, faculty, practitioners, and non-landscape architecture audiences. And it was a model to engage. Sometimes we complain that we're not at the table, we don't have a voice, but here's a model to engage and collaborate with communities and decision makers in the pre-proposal relationship building and planning. And then finally, we've had lots of other organizations who do conservation and development work who expressed interest in the super studio model. And I think our larger goal is to integrate the landscape architecture approach into them. What if the Nature Conservancy, the largest environmental nonprofit organization in the world, they've been working conservation projects in the wilderness, and now they 10 years ago are starting to work with people, but they don't know how to work with people. But through a landscape architecture approach, they can work with people, and we can have that impact on making those projects even more effective. So that is actually, I can end there and take any questions.
Okay. Thank you for your great presentation, and it's really amazing to hear and to learn about the landscape architectural foundation, because for me, up till some months ago, it was something I didn't know, and by the website and other information, I became acquainted with it. But it's really a great job you are doing. So thank you for this information, especially the last part, I think, fits into what we were thinking about with the webinar, and when you cross it over with the work of Michael. Is Michael also still there? I think so, yes.
I am.
So,
yes, I am.
Going into the questions, if there are people that have questions, they can bring it in the in the chat. But one of the questions is related to what I said about the great work. We were curious about the budgets of the foundation and how you realize these budgets. Before, we heard that the work of Michael and the Wageningen University in principle was started by government subsidies. And so you're a foundation. How do you finance your work?
Okay. We are financed through private donations from individuals, firms, and industry, the landscape architecture community. We have one small grant from the National Endowment of the Arts, and that's something we want to focus on in the future is getting more grant funding. But basically, it's all private funding is how we did it. Mm-hmm. And the Super Studio was not funded. That was all passion, commitment, volunteer work, just like you do at IFLA, from our board. And mm-hmm. It could not have been possible without the partners with Kate Orff and Billy Fleming and Richard Weller at Penn, the LAF board, the task force, the Super Studio task force, who reviewed all those 670 projects. I mean, there was a lot of time put in to make that happen.
Yes, I can imagine. And all the projects, they were done in voluntary work or a student work, yeah. Or it's great, all this energy that you could mobilize.
Yeah, it was also serendipitous, and it was a happy accident, I'll say, that it happened during COVID, because it really brought the students together. They're all working isolated, alone, virtually, and it brought them together around something bigger than themselves, and it gave them agency. Sometimes we hear there's a lot of maybe more angry architecture students, but angry students, because they're learning things that they don't see how, they want to go change the world, save the world, and they don't understand how they as a designer are able to do that. And so this really gave them, they could see how they as a landscape architect could make the changes they want to see.
Mm-hmm. I can imagine. It's also interesting to see when you look a bit through the project in the Netherlands, through the visions of IFLA, World and Europe, and to your work, that there are big differences between countries and cultures, etc. So it starts already with this grand culture, subsidized by governments, etc., but also in the state of the landscape architects and planners. How do you look at that?
I'm sorry, say that question again.
How do you look at those differences? What do you think about when you said in 2016 we didn't do anything about climate change? To hear that was for me quite a shock, because in 2000 I worked on big landscape plans on a national scale as a landscape architect. It's not that it's good in the Netherlands or in Europe, but it's to hear that you did nothing on climate change. It's really strange. So,
As a discipline, yeah. Yeah.
yes,
Because
as a discipline.
because it's so polarized here, bipartisan, that I think IFLA at the time did not, in their advocacy and leadership, did not think it, appropriate that we talk about climate change. But that summit changed everything. So that was important. Yeah.
Interesting, and things change. I don't see any other questions yet. Or okay, yes,
sorry,
one thing is.
I have a comment.
Looks like Ursula has a question. Yeah.
If I may. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I would like to express myself orally because it's a bit complex and maybe it's just an inverted perspective. I would like to give some bottom-up information because I've been invited last week in France as an international expert regarding landscape education in France and in Europe. Because in France, there's a big crisis for recruiting new students. The profession is invisible, it's unattractive, and above all, the fees are catastrophic. It's on the level of cleaning personnel. So I did some interviews in several European countries. I realized that the Netherlands seemed to be faring quite well, but all the other countries where I have some contacts in universities, the analysis was quite appalling. The young generation doesn't go to that profession partly because it is paid too badly. And we see the huge challenges and responsibilities that a landscape architect has, and I agree point per point to everything that has been said today, and I attend a lot of conferences where these big visions of a Green New Deal are being discussed, but we have a young generation which is not following. So who in these countries are going to be the follow-up generations? Also, when the training is partly not adequate for the practitioners, because in Belgium, for example, but also in other countries, landscape practices say the young generation is not trained properly or does not meet their needs in a landscape practice. So I see a huge discrepancy between those big challenges and responsibilities for the profession and a total drop of interest in young generation. Like in Belgium, for example, there's 7 landscape architects for 700 architects applicants in the master course. There's also calls for for applications for landscape chairs where architects and any other professions can apply. So where do we start? Because when we invert the perspective, where is this generation? If we are not training them, where are they that can meet those huge challenges? And in the meanwhile, other professions are lobbying actively and with success in order to gain access to landscape contracts. I think
Okay, and what point?
a bit too
What do you want to hear about?
Sorry, yeah.
Your point is clear, but what do you want to hear from us?
Yes.
Maybe Michael, Michael, who is at university, can add something to that. I, in general, would say I recognize part of it in the Netherlands, but what I also recognize is that from other countries, we invite and have people from other universities and other ex-students that are working here on too low fares. So firms that are used to pay rather normal fares to the Dutch architects, landscape architects, they have the possibility to use in a bad way other people from other countries who are used to lower fares. So that complicates the thing. And the other side, I think our universities don't have lack of incoming students in general. And anyway, there is an architectural crisis coming on, and mostly the landscape architects run a bit behind and have more diverse jobs than the architects. So the architects with the building crisis are directly
I think the
hurt.
Netherlands situation is rather good, but if we need to work on a large scale, i.e. not on national scales, but international scales, because these climate challenges, they don't work on a national scale. it needs to work in the whole of Europe. And I mean, honestly, in Germany, my colleague was telling me young students prefer to go to urban studies because it's more prestigious and it's paid better. So where is the lobbying to make higher fees? It needs to be lobbied. Why are the wages of landscape architects, the percentage on projects, it's too low? Where can we lobby to attain also a credibility? Because people that are being paid low wages, they're also
I think that's up to all of us as a discipline to lobby. And on one hand, I remember in the history that we had lower lower wages than urbanists or architects, but that changes when we really present ourselves of people that are doing good jobs and not only landscaping or greening the work of others. And in that happened with us in the crisis of the 80s of the last century. So work that was done by urbanists was taken over by landscape architects because we did a better job, and because that was also one of in those days we were cheaper. So we were cheaper than them. We were invited during crisis. We did better jobs, and afterwards the urbanists didn't come equally back. So
well,
I think
I trained in the
inviting.
90s. Yeah, I trained in the 90s, and it was said, you know, I trained in the UK, and it was going to be the era of landscape architects. And I'm 30 years later, and the visibility has dropped dramatically. So there's something that is kind of not going the right way. I'm sorry to be a bit provocative today, but
Yes, so help us
I'm
and others
sorry
help us
to
with
have a very
solutions.
grim feedback from several European countries. So this somehow needs to be addressed, because if there's no
Yes, it's
well-trained
addressed by
landscape
now in this
architect.
webinar. So Barbara, could you say anything about the situation in the United States about that?
Sure. We have an enrollment cliff as well since 2008 with the building crisis. We also, fees are an issue. You know, with AI and technology, what is the future of the discipline? What is, you know, students, they have all like GIS and lots of tools online that they can go through a landscape process and do the work. I think the strategies that the organizations are working on here, you know, with IFLA is, and we've invested in public awareness communication strategy. So public awareness in the US is very low. It's a very complex thing most people don't understand what landscape is. They don't understand design. They don't understand, you know, so we've invested, all the organizations, in deep research to come up with communication strategies, which we're implementing now to help reframe public understanding of what is landscape architecture, why is it important, and what does a landscape architect do. We also show our value through trying to show value through, again, performance measures, research, innovation, individuals, again, that infiltration strategy, at least from an LAF perspective. IFLA is working to increase awareness in the K through 12 arena, kindergarten through 12, you know, the grade school, high school area. It's a big problem, absolutely. And those are just some of the things we're working on. But the whole fee-based type of industry is a problem. But I think the more we show value, create value, then people will invest in that value. So.
Yeah, another thing is, I think Ursula pointed a bit to that we have very high aspirations. And then we think, or we see that we are not seen. And in between is, are we really able to to value these aspirations? Can we do the thing that we say that we can do? So often I see in our field and in the different countries that the aspirations are great, but the work that we are really doing is really small, simple, or not that high aspirational as we say it is. So that's one of the things that I said also to Ursula. We have to show how good we are. And if you show it one way or another, finally, it will bring some result. but maybe
Yeah,
not the
but
result.
to give an example, in Belgium, for instance, in Wallonia, there has been last year like public contracts for public parks that were only accessible to architects with a degree, like with a degree licensed architects. I mean, there is a real problem also in defining who has access to contracts. And as long as there's lobbying from other disciplines and the basis, there's not even access to the jobs that they're supposed to be doing, because other professions lobby stronger and are in the public authorities and are defined.
I understand it, Ursula, but just say that it's bad doesn't help. You have to fight for it. And it's a
but
difficult
this
fight.
needs support and synergy with all the international.
So that's why IFLA Europe is fighting for recognition of the title. So, for instance, in the Northwestern European countries, the title is recognized in one way or another, but in many Eastern and Southern countries, it isn't. So then it's
in Belgium it isn't, and it's
it's an uneven market. But that's partly something to support by IFLA Europe, and on the other hand, it's something that you have to organize with your own national discipline in your own country and help to stand together. So
that's another question, but thank you.
One other thing, the Wageningen approach is rather, I think, technical, although finally it ends up in a societal debate, which I think is very good. But what I like about the foundation, I think you are doing a good job in that, is this work on equity and on the social part of our work. So really searching ways to connect the discipline to other communities, to the community anyway. So that's I think we have to work rather strong on with IFLA and IFLA Europe. Bruno said something about that, but in all ways we have to search how to really also on this point work on the aspirations we have, to not be there just for the government or for the people that have enough money to pay us, but also for the people with different color, different ethnics, different cultures. So that's one of the themes I think in the future we will take up.
Thank you. I think we started very intentionally in 2015 before the summit, and I think we have still a long way to go. I think Canada, the CSLA, has done amazing work there. They're ahead of us with their reconciliation work. I think also from one of our fellows, which might help the issues that Ursula is bringing up too, but is really also starting to focus more on the pre-proposal work and working in communities and being building those relationships. So when the funding does become available from the federal government, that the communities are positioned and have the relationships and the vision for what could be but they're designing their communities and have agency over their communities. And then the work we're doing to try to get more BIPOC designers, because BIPOC communities want BIPOC designers. They try to help them vision and design their communities.
Another thing is the question you asked to Michael, Barbara. You said, how did you connect with politicians? And in the European case, and especially in the Dutch case, maybe that's it's always a problem, but it's a bit more easier because we are a small country and we have this tradition of landscape architecture and planning really developed alongside the social democrat society in the last century. So we are in a distance, but still close. And so I was wondering, how do you work in the States on that in your different projects, and for instance, with the new Green Deal?
Yes, I think as the foundation, as a charitable philanthropic organization, we are not allowed to lobby and advocate, and that is the primary strategy of ASLA. So they have their government affairs, and they have their 50 chapters and 15,000 members, and so they work with them. But what LAF does do is provide the research or knowledge or inspiration or mandate to go out and be active in whatever way, shape, or form you can. And then providing platforms like the Super Studio to, again, a tool to collaborate, to do the things that we said we need to do, collaborate, work upstream, work with different agencies, and show the value of what we do. So in that way, that is a form of advocacy.
Okay, so you as foundation, you are not allowed to, lobbying is one word, but contact politicians or send them material that you, that sounds very strange.
Yeah, I know, it's
because there must be going
so
on a lot of
foreign.
lobbying out of the market, etc.
Yeah,
so,
the
but then as
ASLA can
persons,
lobby. Yeah, ASLA can lobby.
yes,
They
and
have their,
architects themselves. So in the
say
Netherlands,
again.
often it's the question that there is a distance between the public and the politicians. But in general, it's like if you want to, you grab the mobile phone and you call them. So because we're not a dictatorship, and so you can search the. So they have a secretary and delegates in the parliament. They are busy, but you can reach out to them immediately. I see also a difference in that between several associations in Europe. So
yes. So ASLA members or anybody can call their, except if you live in Washington, D.C. like me. So that's a whole nother story where we are disenfranchised and have no representation. So even though we're pay the second highest most taxes in the United States. But anyway, that's a whole nother issue. So anybody can call their representatives or their senators, and then ASLA does work to kind of unite on certain initiatives to promote and project. But that is the work of ASLA because of their tax designation by the IRS as a society versus us as a charitable organization. So,
and are there working many? Are there many landscape architects working inside the administration?
There are civil servants who work for the agencies. There are a few mayors, people on city councils throughout the country, but that is actually a goal of ASLA to get more landscape architects into elected positions. Yes. And, we encourage that again through the declaration and through in our fellowship program. But again, there are many ways to act, and not everyone is suited as a politician. So we act through our work, and the vision and the work we do there is our most effective way.
So I don't see any other questions. Ursula is mentioning the media, which of course that's often in other countries one of the direct ways to be visible and to connect with politics and administration. So, for instance, how it happened with this project of Michael was more through the media than through reaching out to politicians, and afterwards they were curious for this project. So the same I did when I was working years ago for, which is also an interesting figure, the National Landscape Advisor. So that's an independent landscape architect. You had him in one of your programs, Dirk Simons. And so he gives independent advice to the government, but also we used the media to do proposals, to bring in concepts, and then via the media, you are in contact with developers, you are in contact with politicians, etc.
Yep. Yep. And that's again ASLA's core strategy for ASLA is public awareness and work. And so, but all the organizations invested in developing communication strategy for the U.S. based on our core cultural values. And those strategies are in a nutshell, four-pronged. One, to talk about the benefits to people, not just talk about the environment. Two, to show how landscape architects create community and build social capital. Three, use the metaphor of an architect to help people understand what landscape architecture is. So say like a building architect who designs buildings, landscape architects design all the outdoors that you're in. And then four, use images to show what you do. So those are the communication strategies that all the organizations are working on implementing and throughout their all their communications and programming.
So I think we have to wrap up by now. We had interesting interesting discussions and questions back and forth. Okay, I would say I'm still waiting for Katarina to enter, IFLA Europe president, but she is already arrived, I see, maybe even longer time. So I don't know when she arrived, but Katarina, could you?
I was arrived on
take
time. I
over
think.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Nick. I was arrived on time. I was very happy to hear Barbara. I'm sorry I missed the first speaker, but what I heard and from the discussion, well, they were very interesting to me. So if you don't want to add something, can I conclude?
Oh, maybe you will shortly going to do it also, but I want to thank personally Barbara for her excellent story and her willingness to show us the work in the United States of the Landscape Architecture Foundation. And I think it would be very good if Europe and IFLA World keep connections with the Landscape Architecture Foundation and maybe exchange work ideas, but also maybe do combined work. I see possibilities when I look at the things that were presented. So up to you to bring the meeting to an end. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thanks for your good work.
Thank you. So thank you, first of all, for all these wonderful speeches that we heard today in presentations. And although I was informed that we're going to talk about nature and landscape, but it seems that most of the presentation, they were beyond on that. And we spoke about the true meaning and what is the future for landscape and landscape architecture, which by seeing your speech, Barbara, I found, especially when you describe this new declaration, that we have many common issues. I'm speaking, of course, on behalf of IFLA Europe, but I think the same is for IFLA World. We're all talking about the same thing. I think what is missing for the future is to start speaking on the language of the politician for people to understand, but also in a very simple language for people to understand what is landscape, because landscape is a really complicated, if you can say, meaning, but actually to speak clearly about what landscape architecture are doing. This is something that from this, anyway, years that I've been in IFLA Europe, I understood from our trip, if you can say, along all the countries. But I see for the future that this is an ongoing presentation about what is the future of landscape and our disciplines. What I can see, it's for the next century, if we can talk, really we need to be with nature, to have this culture about nature and about our landscape, but also to start really thinking about resilience, climate, and nature positive future. This is very important. I believe that landscape architects, hearing you all today, they really can contribute on that. The thing is to have the voice to start speaking on this. And really, I believe that we need to promote landscape and we need to promote nature in decision making in order to develop this holistic vision that we're talking about. I hope in the 25 years, if IFLA can really celebrate the 100 years, today we celebrated 75th, can really bring this holistic landscape culture, and we see how we have progressed on that. But this is an ongoing discussion. We're going to have soon the International Landscape Architecture Biennale in Barcelona next week. The theme is going to be poetics on remediation. So remediation is closer to the things that we talked today. I believe that the discussion can carry on. And this presentation and Bruno Marquez that spoke at the beginning today and Steffi Schuppel as the leader, they're going to present again what is can the future can be. So we need to start discussing, taking from what Ursula just talked before. Yes, there are varieties among Europe at least and among the world, how people regarding the profession, regarding how landscape is seen. The thing is to start and to continue all of us talking and exchange experience. I like what you said, Barbara, that we need images. This is true because it's not the way that people really understand. We're talking, but we need to show this, and taking also from, probably I'm going some years back, from Jeffrey Jellick on Landscape Movement, that he was saying that actually he was believing that landscape architecture was the profession of the future. I still believe on that. And he was saying that we're promoting a landscape art at a scale we never conceived in history. Thing is, today, probably we must start changing our mind and really partnership with nature and culture together. So this is very important. I liked, and I conclude with that, what you said, that what we do to our landscape, we do to ourselves, because really proves that landscape is us. Is not us and landscape, is not something separated. Is if we understand and conceive this meaning, I think all of us, we will create better future. So I conclude with that. I would like to thank you personally, and Michael Van Buren, if I'm pronouncing very well, and Barbara Dutch for this excellent presentation. But of course, Nick Hesendorf for really moderating, organizing this this webinar, Bruno and Sally and Steffi, anyone who has organized it. So thank you very much, and I really looking forward to collaborate in the future with LAF, with Landscape Architecture Foundation, which I found very interesting, and of course with University of Copenhagen. Thank you all. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Goodbye. Good evening to everybody, or good day for some.